Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nate Houghton, co-founder of Incendium. Welcome to this afternoon's Growth Accelerator. I'm here with Lior Weinstein, who is our client twice over and a man of very many talents. So thanks for joining us this afternoon, Lior.
Thanks for having me.
So if we can start, I feel like it's probably useful to level set, just given all the different things you have going on. Just who are you? What are all the things you're working on? And maybe a little bit about how you ended up doing all these different things.
How much time do we have? I don't know if we can cover all the things.
I doubt we can. I think at least some.
High level, I work as a fractional chief technology officer and a fractional chief growth officer, mostly for companies that are 20 to 100 million, sometimes a little bit over 100 million in revenue. And I do it mostly on upside. Like there's a cash component, but I really come in to participate in the growth and kind of new value created, in the companies. And last year, I also started teaching other CTOs how to do this so they can become fractional CTOs, or if they're already fractional CTOs, but they're kind of capped on their growth, then, how to grow that business. So that's my day-to-day, and I do it with amazing business partners, amazing executives. Love my work.
And so what was... Take back to like the first fractional job you took. Do you remember what that was and how it started? And were you intentional about being fractional, or did it just kind of work out that way? How did people get started in this?
So I think there's a few ways to philosophically look at this. And I think throughout my life, I've been working and kind of innovating and starting multiple ventures and supporting multiple ventures. So I've always had the context switch. That muscle has been grown and cultivated for a few decades, and also the curiosity and the interest to work across and juggle multiple things. And that could be like multiple like small things, side things, but also multiple like big things. So as far as like doing the work, like doing fractional work, and let's kind of look at that differently than, let's say, consulting. So consulting, which I've done in the past, consulting, you kind of
I was going to ask for this distinction, but I think it's useful for people to know.
Yeah. So consulting, you kind of, you give advice, right? So by definition, you're consulting, right? You give consult, and normally somebody has a defined problem, and you're coming in to specifically squash that. Maybe it's a string of problems, a series of problems, but somebody else is operating, right? Now, what I realized over the years, I'm an operator. I like to actually be accountable, be responsible. And so with the fractional positioning, the key difference between consulting and fractional is that you actually do the thing. You do the thing, you're accountable for the thing, you're responsible for the thing. That said, as a fractional C-suite, fractional leader, I kind of say you are in charge, but you're not in control. So the way I like to explain it is that you're in the back of the Uber, you're not in the front of the Uber. So you are accountable, you are responsible, you lead the team, you choose vendors, you go to the board meetings if it's relevant and so on. But you're doing it for multiple companies. Now, sometimes I ask why do it for multiple people ask me, why do it for multiple companies? Who even does that? And I'm like, one of affordability, economics. Hiring somebody like me full time, let's say for a CTO seat, is not economically viable by and large most small to mid-sized businesses, right? That's one. Second is enterprises can't hire me because I don't want to work for an enterprise. So that really leaves kind of the startup world, and then if you're like a technology startup, right? Like you're selling technology, bread and butter, I probably say you should probably have a full-time CTO, if not just for the investor type relationship, because they don't want their capital, managed by somebody that's, part-time attention to it. I was an entrepreneur multiple times over, so that's I totally get it. I would prefer to invest in the people that, if it's a technology company, for the people that's full-time. But if it's not, and most businesses are tech-enabled, they're not tech businesses, then fractional makes a lot of sense. So I've been doing the fractional activity in practice for basically all my life. The first time, let's say how it escalated over the years, kind of got pointed, is that I started taking full ownership of delivery for clients, like big projects, right? Some of them like companies like Cox Communication, for a huge, telecom entertainment company, or media group at the time. And I kind of got in to deliver end-to-end stuff, and not just end-to-end projects, but end-to-end business units. Like they came in, create this product, create the business, get the customers, and do build and transfer. So as soon as that started coming in, I ended up kind of building an agency that was both marketing and technology performance. So and for people who don't know what performance agencies are, that means you're making most of your dollars, if not all of your dollars, on business results, right? So you only get paid once something happens. that was a through line through my kind of marketing
Mhm.
activities. So I kind of grew up in the engineering space and the marketing and sales space at the same time. And I was an affiliate marketer. So I had a performance mindset on the business side since forever. And with that agency, we went into companies and we said, give us all your bits and bytes. Doesn't matter, ones and zeros. I don't care if it's your printer or certainly your, ad campaigns. Give us a flat retainer. And those retainers weren't that dramatic, like 10,000, 20,000 a
Mhm.
month. But give us uncapped commissions on net new revenue we create for the company. And they asked me rather, what commission, right? And I'm like, oh, you define, because some businesses can afford to give 5, some can afford to give 30. And what's the threshold? How do we define net new revenue? I'm like, well, take your growth. So if you're used to growing at 10% a year or 15% a year, then any dollar over that, then we measure it monthly or quarterly. And then the inevitable question came in, what if you're not making enough money? And then
Mhm.
I leave. It's
Yeah.
very simple. so
Yeah.
so easy relationship. So from that agency, I started effectively taking full ownership of
Right.
entire technology, departments and marketing activities in a company. And I de facto became their CMO, their chief revenue officer, their CTO. And that was the first time that suddenly it became like, yeah, I was like, people introduced me as like, this is let's say it's an external meeting or investors, this is, the CTO or the CMO, even though I was like in an agency hat,
Mhm.
but that was the kind of, ownership and control and accountability I had. And from there, it just became of me like realizing that agency grew to like 40 people in the first year.
Mhm.
And I realized, man, I don't like holding the wheel, right?
Right.
So I shifted everything to focus just on the leadership portion. And then
Okay.
it became solo, fractional CTO, fractional chief growth.
You started to talk a little bit about this, but the beginning of your answer there talked a lot about all the different things you would take on, partially because you like it and partially because, I found that people like it when you do that. But
Right.
in terms of drawing lines there, like where does it end? Where are you still a fractional CTO versus a founder? Like what are some of the things that define it? Or do
I
you?
think
Yeah.
I'm a founder in my own ventures. So
Right.
like when I start a company and I'm like an equal owner,
Mhm.
maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 30-30, which I do a lot. Then I'm a founder, right? But so a key distinction for me, so if you think about leaders versus managers, right? So if,
Okay.
like managers or the art of management is you're managing an existing capability. Right?
Mhm.
So there's something that's there, it's well defined, and you need to make sure it works and make sure it
Mhm.
works in the right efficiency and it's still effective and so on. Leaders, though, are really there to create new capabilities for the
Mhm.
organization, right? Like sometimes I get CTOs join the program, and they ask me about the multitude, like what happens if a client has like wants full time, or and I tell them, why do you think that the full time matters? And they're like, well, maybe they have like 20 engineers or 30 engineers. I'm like, what are you saying, that you couldn't be the CTO of a company that has 200 engineers or
Right.
1,000 engineers? Like, you don't understand the work, right? Yeah, you probably can't be the team lead, for 30 people, right? That's like a day-to-day blocking and tackling management. But on the C-suite, it's about leverage. It's about creating the right organizational structure under you, the right management, the right process. So for me, that's the key distinction: the leadership versus management. And then as far as like founder or not founder, it's more, my ownership in the company, like technical ownership, like equity
Right.
ownership.
Right.
But I would say, even in my own companies, I'm effectively doing the same thing. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, the difference is that I'm also putting, my cash
Right.
into it.
When it comes to you mentioned you do some chief growth officer work and some CTO work, and I wonder, with relation to this idea of leading versus managing or performance and results, like do you find that they're different in those two categories, or do you kind of treat them the same?
So a few years ago, when I had agency,
Mhm.
I explained to my clients. I think that's what also managed to get us traction. There are other performance agencies, like it's not a
Mhm.
unique thing, right? Just not a lot of people do it, but it's certainly common. You can find them.
Mhm.
But I came in and I told them, like in the very first meeting when we were talking about the option of working together, I can guarantee results, and
Mhm.
that usually throws them off because we're a performance agency.
Right. Right.
And can guarantee results, can guarantee output. I can guarantee input and effort.
Right.
And I share with them my process that now, like it's at CTOx, I call the functional technology framework, which is to say every project is going to do one of three things to the company. It's either going to de-risk the company, and you might de-risk because you have a key man risk. John knows all the spreadsheets, right? and maybe it's a market risk, system risk. All of our servers are in a physical center in Utah, and any host of risks, right? The second one is unclog. So anywhere we have a throughput problem, meaning we already have some kind of an inbound, some kind of an input that can get to the other side in time. That could be like, we're getting the clients, we can't get the PDF contracts out. We're getting like you and I have in some of the accounts, right? Like where leads are coming in, like why are we, somebody needs to pick up the leads and kind of do the work. Right. So that's a throughput problem. So we call that unclog. And lastly is scale. Like, okay, we like the boat, no leaks. We like the speed, but we want more. We want more velocity. We want more clients. We want more revenue, whatever that is. Now in technology, that applies to technology projects, but the business impact is all the same. So in that agency, I basically kind of laid that out and I said, we're going to create an environment where growth is inevitable. Meaning if the risk is not there, or rather it's managed in a way that you don't have to attend to it much. And the operation, as far as the company, has no bottlenecks. Like we can onboard 5,000 clients or 50 clients, depending on our goals, what the business goals. And the only thing that's left is scale. Then the only thing we can do is grow. There's nothing else that's left. So for me, whether I'm doing chief growth or chief technology, that is my framework.
Yeah.
And in that context, it's all the same. Day to day, obviously, radically different.
Right.
When I'm doing growth stuff, I'm on front stage things more than backstage things, right? Like landing pages, ads, communicating with customers, stuff like that. Some backstage as well, like services like Incendium. And then technology, it's mostly backstage.
Right.
Mostly backstage. And then the whole, in-house, outsourced, your IP, buy, build, like all those things, way more complicated than, the growth side of things. But framework-wise, mental model-wise, both of them basically run on the same tracks.
Yeah, you're talking about activity metrics and performance metrics a little bit. It's like stuff you can totally control, and if you do that well enough to make the performance inevitable, I think that's right. that makes a lot of sense. So before, and I do want to talk a little bit about growth and what you're seeing, and maybe a lot about that, just given your expertise. But there are a lot of people watching this, or maybe like me, who also like to context switch a lot and like to do a lot of these different things. Obviously that can be very tiring, and if you're not careful about it, it can be very disorganized. Are there certain, and you have time clearly to sit on this with me right now, so clearly you have all this organized and in a pretty good place. What would you tell someone maybe who's younger, who's thinking about a career of this nature, like how it is that they can set it up so they don't drive themselves insane while they try to retain their curiosity?
It's a tough one. Like I'll give you a few of my perspective, and at the same time, when I speak to CTOs that want to do this work, I actually recommend them to choose a niche. Okay. And so one of the reasons I recommend them to choose a niche, which is very annoying for CTOs, and the reason it's annoying because they think, and they're right, that they can handle any technology problem.
Sure.
Right. Any technology initiatives, and most of them like multiple industries, multiple, especially over decades, so many technologies have come and gone, right? But I explained to them that it's a marketing and sales problem, first of all. So you want to focus so your message is consistent, right? I can't tell you send 3,000 emails. If it's for, 3,000 ICPs, you sent one email 3,000 times, right? There's no learning. And so that's what, meaning there's value in concentrating and focusing the energy to build up your business. Once your business is built and you have cash, you can make other decisions, right? So that question of context switching means something when you're first starting out versus later. Like it's easier to build and concentrate energy and consolidate rather than diversify, right? Generally speaking, you build wealth by concentrating and you keep wealth by diversifying. And that's true for normal productivity. The second thing is operationally. When you are in a niche, and I'm not in a niche, so we'll get to that. When you are in a niche, you get to solve the same problems. Like your 9 a.m. meeting is similar to your 11 a.m. meetings because you just solve the same thing in a different continuum. Like same thing like with your product and service, because it is productized. Different niches, or not, this client is onboarding, this client is in, pre ICP, post ICP, pre-growth, post-growth. Like it's the same thing you did, just, you call it, chicken wires instead of CTOs. So there's a lot of value in concentrating a niche, either in the buildup or operationally to not pay the context switching tax. Right. That's it. So I work with well over a dozen companies and projects, and I have like a dozen emails and Google Drives and Slacks and Teams. And so there's a few tricks. So I use like a calendar function. I switched from Calendly to cal.com exactly because of the support for multiple accounts.
Okay.
And I connect everything there. And I even myself, if I want to schedule, I use that because it does take into consideration all of my schedule. The second thing, I really try, I have different policies. Like, for example, Lior doesn't do standing meetings. I don't care how big the company is. I just, if we start and they tell me, oh yeah, a leadership meeting Wednesday at 11 a.m., I'm like, you have a great time. It's going to be a great
I don't
meeting.
do that. Yeah.
I think I kind of tell, I love that for you. This is great. And I don't say that cynically. I'm like, really, I love that for you. You know, my AI is going to join. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But I tell them at the same time, I don't do standing meetings, but I do unlimited meetings.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, so like, and you maybe have seen this on my calendar, like when you book a meeting with me, you have to say, what's the ideal outcome of this meeting? What are some stuff I need to know? And is this important, or are you okay that this might get rescheduled? So they have to answer those things. Oh, they also answer, what's the best result from having done this meeting? So I force people to structure an agenda when they talk to me. So it helps me, even if it's 60 seconds before the meeting, I read quick. I'm like, okay, I'm in. And that's super helpful, as opposed to just generally Lior and Nate, catch up.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Just ideal outcome, best result. Is this important? Great. Do I need to click on something to read? Great. So that's a trick. So use the calendar system, use that mini. So this is something I learned from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. He calls this the impact filter, which means you're filtering everything about the project besides the impact. So that's why you're describing the ideal outcome or the best result of the engagement, whatever, meeting, project, whatever that is. And so I use that trick. And I tell my clients and my partners, I will meet with you every single day if you tell me why we're meeting every single day. So as long as that's true, that's not a problem. The way I kind of set the sail for the meeting is through that quick impact filter. And that allows me to be in that space. Other tricks is like, I don't do, I don't, and I do at the same time. So I try not to do super back-to-back, meaning like finishes at 11, starts at 11, because my brain does need a little bit of a come down. I also try not to meet, and I say try, because it's not a perfect effort, not to meet at certain days, like Fridays and Wednesdays. I really prefer not to do meetings. So I can, and sometimes some seasons I'm like, I don't do Mondays. I want like a long weekend. It's not necessarily I'm on vacation, but my mind is, getting a little bit more
Actually thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So all these things, like between the quick impact filters, forcing through the calendar, doing the buffers between the meetings, doing some days that I just don't let people automatically book meetings. They can always text me, Slack me, Teams me, for a meeting, email, but not, automatically book themselves. So that, because my schedule, I create the buffers on the schedule, and then the calendar system, considers that, then I tell them, here's my link. If you see a slot, it's yours, because it's already organized to support my sanity.
You've designed it. Yeah.
That's right. And if not, then let me know if you need something, including if you need to talk at 11 p.m. Like, it's always there, but the automatic ones are already built so I can support my context switching.
Shifting gears a little bit. So I want to talk a bit about growth and love to hear a little about what you're seeing. I think the context for this is we, as an organization, dealt with a lot of shifts in digital marketing, particularly last year, over the course of last year. And I think I have a thesis on AI not necessarily making things better or even worse necessarily, but making people feel as if they could do a lot of things that they didn't feel like they could do before, and thus increasing the volume on a lot of tactics, both inbound and outbound. I'm interested if you've seen things change across, and you I think have a much broader category of growth channels that you look at than we tend to focus on. Has that been something that you've noticed yourself, where you're seeing more marketing have to be done across channels, or is it something where you still see some pockets that are evident?
Yeah, a ton of changes. Marketing is one of these things that was highly susceptible to these technologies because it's a creative effort. Like when you make up words, there's no standard of saying this word is correct, right? So like you're trying to figure out use AI on the tax code, right? Like it has to be accurate.
Right.
Legal is somewhat in bounds, right, between creative and factual. But marketing is all creative, very little facts in terms of like the hallucinatory problem set, right? So with that, there's one policy changes that I have. Like if I'm talking to a marketing agency or a marketer and they're like proud or diminishing the use of AI, it's an immediate no. It's not even like a curiosity for me.
Right.
Like, tell me about it. No, I will not pay for your brain cycles that could have been well achieved by silicon and electricity.
Yep.
Absolutely not. And that's the same for like marketers. If I'm hiring employees or considering hiring employees, now if they're great employees that have been there for a while, because I sometimes I go new into companies, right, and they just haven't had the opportunity, to really take it seriously because leadership didn't, support it. I'm like, great, that's not a problem. But then I give them the opportunity, and then they, I expect them to step up because it is a huge shortcut. So what I've seen in growth, similar to technology, is that you can suddenly use top talent, right? Marketing is one of these things, right? Because it's like many professions, like the difference between good and great is dramatic. It's not, 2x, right? It's more than 10x. And now you can afford the 10xers. You can afford the people that are saying, you know what? Yeah, I charge $300 an hour. But now their productivity is ridiculous. Right. Because when you have a top talent and they use their tools, they are truly delivering like entire teams.
Right.
So from a personnel perspective, huge change that I see. Like if somebody's pitching me, this is the marketing team, I'm like, where are your agents?
Right.
So that's a huge change. In terms of specific growth tactics, some of the challenges we have, right? Like let's say email, open rates. Suddenly open rates look high because a lot of AIs are opening.
Yeah.
And then that's a false positive. You're like, look at my campaign, 30-40% open rate. And like, no,
Right.
this is like the AI opening. So that's like one challenge. Also, we have, on the cold side, cold LinkedIn, cold email, you have these weird customizations, like super personalization. It's kind of like how do you know my underwear size? Like
exactly.
It's kind of like abnormal personalization that's too obtrusive and to the other point. Like people are thinking, oh, I'm going to put in all these dynamic variables and I'm going to use Clay and I'm going to use this agent and then it creates this like how the heck does a person have time, for a cold email and it's an instant, like we went on the other side. If our first sense of spam was like, dear Mr. Lior, hailing from Nigeria, like you had that kind of sense. Oh yeah, it's definitely spam, and now you have this high quality spam. Like it's a different side of it.
Yep.
So that's a big challenge. That's a big challenge both for our outbound campaigns, any outbound growth, because you're almost trying to not be artificially intimate.
Not yet, right? And I think for me, the question to your point is like there's a point in the process where it's helpful to say, I did some research on your company and here's what I found. It's not before you've ever met them, right? I think that's just, it feels unnatural to people. But the high quality spam challenge is a really interesting one. And I've had this happen a few times where I've worked with people on the team with some combination of AI and humans to put content together. And there is this regression to like marketing speak emails, which is really interesting, where it's like, that looks like every other one. And can we just make it sound natural again? Without, and so I think there's a lane there, but I do find that tone has been an interesting one to try to solve for.
Yeah. And you have like, there's a company in Atlanta, Lavender.
Yeah.
That, tries to give you that insight, right? Like how it sounds, natural, not natural, and so on. Shout out to Will. And then I saw, but then the flip side, you have, Jordan Crawford. We should tag him. It's hilarious. And Jordan talks about now this concept of PVP, permissionless value props. Like send them an email so good that they can't ignore it in terms of like value. That's why I call it permissionless, because you're just kind of, sending a cold. Here's like an amazing insight you need to know about. So the early versions of that, in kind of a few years ago of email was to give you like industry news, right? About your company, about your industry, whatever it is. Like, did you know, oh, I've been following this. Now, really with that AI research capabilities, you can really give somebody something super valuable on your cold reach outs. And then it's not just about proving that you're a person and not a spam, right? Spam mail, but you're actually delivering value on the first go, because otherwise producing that in like human form makes the entire campaign, not affordable. And then on sales side, like I hire a bunch of salespeople all the time. And just yesterday I had an interview for a new account exec, and he was describing like how he's doing prospecting as like the kind of an SDR side. And you see how he can leverage it. And a person that comes with batteries included, that has a sense of urgency, these tools are just supercharging. Really,
the permissionless value prop thing is interesting, because I guess the quibble I would have with that is, I think there are more companies then there are companies that have something valuable enough to be good enough for that, right? And so I think that
yeah.
like it, and that's ultimately not really my problem as a
That,
marketer, is it? But if I only worked with companies that I thought were really going to crush it, I wouldn't have much of a business. So, and I do think like
same thing. Not all companies cold email can work, right? Like cold
right.
email, probably, plumbers, probably don't, not a great, use of channel.
It's not how you think about it. And I guess the other insight, which might relate to this a little bit, is just some of our findings around, for whatever reason, we can reach out as me, just looking to talk with somebody. But then the funniest thing about it is that I get on a call and they don't want to talk about a consultant. They want somebody who does stuff. And we have a solution for that. But if we had emailed them about that solution, they never would have been interested in it. So and I wonder if it maybe, I don't know if it just looks different enough than a typical cold email, but I do think there's some sort of triumvirate of like having the right profile yourself and having the right affinity with them, and having, the right kind of offer. But it has hurt the medium for sure. It's been a lot harder to make it work than it used to be.
And so explain that a little bit more. So that means like for your kind of service, they're looking for the team that does the work, not just the team that enables the capability.
Exactly. But at the top of the funnel, they want to talk to Nate, the growth consultant, not Incendium, the growth consultancy.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the big shift, right? So we're shifting back into like founder-led. You trust people because the AI is just out there. So you're eager to trust someone. So,
you really want to. I think we still want to connect with each other, but and this is a huge disadvantage. Like anyone who has something to do with sales or business development in your LinkedIn title, if you're trying to do LinkedIn cold outbound, like heaven help you, honestly. It's just like people know what you're doing. But if you're a founder and you're reaching out to other founders, they do want to connect, and they might even want to buy something from you. It's just they might not know it yet. But
it's an interesting, like you and I operate a lot in that 0 to 1 growth space, right? Like how to like introduce growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very different challenge than scaling growth. Like scaling growth is generally easy. I mean, it's expensive, but you kind of know what to do, and there's only so many ways to do it. And I don't want to say easy, like it's its own thing.
Maybe simpler.
But 0 to 1, there's way more uncertainty on where does capital need to go, because time goes no matter what. And usually in that stage, there's not a lot of confidence on the client side organizationally to invest in those activities. When you're already in growth mode, the CEO is generally going to tell you, please spend as much dollars as you possibly can to do more of what you did.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. In the 0 to 1, you're still like fighting for budgets, fighting for buy-in. So it's, 2 weeks pass and nothing's happening. It's like, what is going on? So it's just, all these emotions that exist. And at the same time, like even for us, when we help the fractional CTOs develop their market and give them advice on it, I tell them, you're selling to CEOs. You're selling to CEOs. Like your client is the CEO by and large. Now, doesn't mean you're not going to pass some time through the COO or CF, of course, but generally speaking, the decision maker, and you're joining as a co-pilot to the CEO on the technology side of the business. And because of that, their presence online, right? On LinkedIn, are they saying they're a fractional CTO for da-da-da, or do they have a job right now and they can't use that, which is okay, but that means the trust bridge is going to be longer. Right? So they have all these shortcuts they can do. They can call themselves fractional CTOs. They can call themselves fractional CTO for the niche, for private jet charters over 10 million in revenue.
Yeah.
And then if the CEO gets a reach out, gets a cold email, gets a LinkedIn message, and they see everybody doing these shadow searches, right? Like, okay, who the heck is this Lior? And they're seeing fractional CTO for private jet owners, companies over 10 million. They're like, oh, this is super relevant.
And that's how they know that you did a good job targeting. It has nothing to do with the personalization you put in the message. It's about who you are with relation to who they are.
Yeah, exactly. So from that perspective, the professional services side, that's the one-on-one, actually has a lot of advantage versus the enterprise sales model, where, I mean, for an enterprise to buy because Lior is leading the company, there's like 20 decision makers, 9 decision makers. None of them, by and large, are entrepreneurial. So the concept of founder is like, they don't care about it. They might they might have affinity, but it's not going to be the decision-making criteria. So there's actually a lot of advantage to the SMB side now with AI, because AI can automate and shortcut a lot of the work that otherwise you would have taken way more time or way more money to execute on. But the sales is because of the trust built between humans. And from that perspective, anybody in this space has a significant leg up over like product companies, for example.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the idea of the close being human, I think, gives us at least a starting point to understand this continuum of what you're automating towards the top of the funnel and then making it more and more, which also works with people's time spent, because you don't have time to work all 3,000 prospects. You can see which ones might be worth your time or have earned your time effectively, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it'll continue to change, I'm sure. And I'm sure we'll keep talking about it. But thanks for taking the time to chat with us today, Laura. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It was great.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.